goes to her. So we are recording this so that we are in compliance with the rules. As far as quorum count, Judy, you have yourself, AJ, Bill, well, AJ Kircher, Bill Caudle, Jamie Johnson, Jeanette Frank, Joanne Fred Arcangelo, Judy McKinney Cherry, and then you have some additional staff and guest presence as well. So
Great.
That being said, the meeting is all yours.
Yep. Thank you, Dan. And thanks for, I'll call the meeting to order. And you've just heard our roll call. So thank you. I'll ask if there is anyone that is in the meeting that has a conflict of interest that they need to disclose at this time. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. Everyone should have a copy of the minutes from our March 27th meeting. If everyone has had a chance to read those minutes, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes. I would like you to say your name first, so we know who it is for the record.
This is Joanne. I'll move it.
Thank you, Joanne.
Bill Caudle, second.
Thank you, Bill, for seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with the youth program and ask for the update.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's me, Keith. I don't know if that makes me appear on your screen or not.
It does.
Okay. But I'm going to go through this, and if everybody will indulge me, I mean, I'd like to be able to interrupt myself a couple times as I go with new information, because things are changing so quickly, and I probably am frozen since it looks like you all are.
You're back.
Am I back?
You're back, Keith.
Okay, so
You never left.
I'm going to start with like the historical information, right? Previous approvals and goals set by the O&O committee. Emerging workforce will enroll a minimum of 100 new individuals in PY19. Program year to date, 51 have been enrolled. That's when I sent Phyllis the final draft of this report a few days ago. As of now, we're at 52. I expect to be at 56 tomorrow. We are moving very quickly with the virtual forms, the virtual enrollments, and the electronic signatures. And my navigators are in contact with applicants and participants on a daily basis. Emerging workforce team will target 25 work experiences. To date, 13 have been engaged in work experiences, 4 on pause due to COVID-19, a situation I don't have to go into detail about, and 4 are currently active. Of those 4 that are currently active, 2 have already been promised jobs when they're with their host site supervisor when their work experiences come to completion, and 2 have been offered jobs in related businesses, both of them with different construction firms. And those are contacts that they made while they were in these work experiences. Excuse me, my allergies here are destroying me. But we are, I mean, I just want to be very, very clear on this. We are still pursuing work experiences, and we have young people that are interested. We have 2 guys now that are interested in winemaking. So we're trying to put them out into wineries that also have vineyards or grape growers and things like that. So we're kind of hitting a wall with those guys because they're willing to do it. But if anybody out there knows of any businesses, and Joanne, I'm kind of looking at you because I know that's up in your neck of the woods, you know, that's a huge field. We have 2 individuals that are ready to rock and roll on that. We just need to find host sites for them. And we've already knocked what I thought was going to be the really difficult piece, and that's the HR paperwork. So we got around that. And so we're just ready to get these guys out and get them into a training work situation.
Are they willing to work in the, are they willing to work in the field? Like literally in the field?
Not only willing to work in the fields, like we have one young man who's really hot to work in the fields. That's what he wants to do. He wants to learn this thing from the ground up. That was not supposed to be a pun, but now it is. Yeah, he wants to learn to prune the grapevines. He wants to learn the whole business, and it's. He's a very passionate young man about this field, and you know the enthusiasm he has for it is really contagious. I've got my navigator pushing me every day to find a spot for him or to help find a spot for him. So.
Well, they're looking. That's why I was asking. I know that they are always looking for labor. So.
Well, I you know, that is what I hear, but we've contacted Azure Hills, we've contacted Bully Hill, we've contacted Dr. Franks. I'm not sure where else right now.
Where does the individual live?
Well, the individual lives on a back hill somewhere between Canisteo and Bath.
Okay.
But the job I don't want that to be a deterrent, because the job he had before this COVID-19 shutdown was in Darien Lake.
Okay.
So
Because I was going to say maybe on, Judy, you probably know more than me, but I would think like Wagner's or, Hazlitt's. I'm just trying to
They're
think.
all looking. They're
Yeah,
all looking.
I was going to
They're all
say
looking. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I would, right out of the gate.
Lakewood,
Absolutely.
Castle Greesh.
Yeah, no, that's not true.
Trying to think of all.
I know. Well, and what I was trying to do is figure out the easiest. Actually, what I would do is I can do a couple things. We have a list of all of the winery owners that we can let them know. The other thing that we can do is put you in contact with the Seneca Lake Wine Trail. Now, the issue with the Seneca Lake Wine Trail is it doesn't represent all the wineries. It's only sort of the bigger ones. And if he's looking for a ground up experience and he doesn't want to get sort of pigeonholed and just doing cheap labor, he wants to go with one of the smaller ones, like a Hector Wine Company or one of those.
Damiani.
I would, yeah, I was gonna say, I would recommend Damiani. They're one of the top wineries in the business. They do a really great job. They have a very helpful personality about them. My son has worked for them off and on, and I think they would welcome that opportunity.
Yeah.
And Keith,
Excellent.
I know that we've worked with Damiani before. Leverage Kelly Christopher on the BIN team, leverage her contacts, because we worked very closely with them, and they've actually offered in the past to take someone under their wing and really teach them ground up the full boatload. So I would see no reason at all why they would not want to jump on this opportunity.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. That's been I've been hitting a wall with these guys, and we'll certainly take that avenue. Excellent. Thank you. So emerging workforce will target 15 training opportunities. To date, 6 individuals have been enrolled in training. All of those trainings, those formal trainings, have either been completed or they've paused. On my written report, it says there are 6 trainings. 2 have been completed and 1 is paused. I'm going to have to ask for your forgiveness on that one. The phlebotomy that I had tagged as completed is on pause. The phlebotomy that we had completed was last PY year, and I got the 2 mixed up in my head. And so I'll submit a correction to that. The one HVAC training is paused, but then we have another HVAC individual who's in a work experience, and that is active. And they do intend to hire him at the end of this. Okay, the rest of this chart, the referrals throughout the first quarter, second quarter. third quarter, I'm going to jump in February. So we had 3 in Hornell, referrals from Hornell in February, 9 from Bath, and 3 from Montour Falls, 14 from Elmira. You know, population-wise, that makes sense. March was very similar, down in Elmira, down a little in Montour Falls. You know, half past March is when all of this hit. April, we've had 1 referral. Now, that came fairly early in April. I will say that in the last couple days, I've had 3 referrals come in. So things are starting to move a little bit. That was after the writing of this report. I've been in contact with the Livingston County WIOA youth representative. We've reached out to the Allegheny County WIOA youth representative. Since they're so close to our borders, we are working back and forth with them to make sure that nobody on the borders falls through the cracks. Enrolled first quarter, new enrolled was 3 for July, 4 for August, 5, and this is sort of, again, historical stuff that you folks have seen before. New enrolled as of April, we've had 2 this month. March, we had 10. So we were really picking up steam before this thing hit. We've hit a lull right now, but I am confident that we're going to pick back up. Now that things are starting to move again, I have added a graph, a little bar graph that Rayanne Whitmer Mason helped me with, to compare last year and this year, and then to compare the months. I'll go to the month or the year-to-date one. We have gone past last year by 15 or 20 people so far, enrollments so far. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to project this into the next couple months, to be honest with you. To be completely straight, everything is so up in the air right now. I don't know how to project it into the future. But in the months of March and April, we've continued to push hard on outreach across all areas. We have added a rural outreach specialist who's working on the outskirts of Chemung and Schuyler counties, so up in the eastern region. Together with my community liaison, the outreach specialist has contacted 122 churches, businesses, and community organizations. In the western region, myself and the community liaison have been in contact with Livingston and Allegheny County WIOA youth representatives. We're using this time to build new relationships and strengthen existing ones. Outreach has led to several informal referrals, and I will define that as folks that they've called me up about that just aren't eligible for the program because they don't live in my area, because they're not in the right age group. We've successfully moved to a virtual enrollment model. We're no longer creating hard files at all. That's no longer necessary for us, so we don't have to go out and get signatures. We don't have to go out and interview applicants. We're able to do all of that via Teams and collect the signatures via emails. My team is working very closely with the PTE program and workplace staff to develop workshops that I've instructed all of my team members to make sure that we can at least provide something we can code as one of our 14 elements in those workshops. And we're moving forward with that. I'm very happy about something that happened just this week with the Skills Up training that I'm sure Dan is going to talk more about. We piloted our first 4-person cohort on that. My Western Region Navigator has 4 individuals that are all interested in human services. So she designed a short little curriculum using the Skills Up classes, identified gaps that all 4 individuals have in common. And I'm very excited about that.
That's awesome, Keith. Absolutely awesome. Does that conclude your report?
That can conclude my report. Or I mean, obviously I'm willing to talk, so I will take questions if you have any questions, but yeah, that's pretty much where I'm ready to end it.
Keith,
I'm assuming that all the remoteness that you're doing, that will continue after this is lifted.
So all the remoteness that we're doing, yes, we are not letting go of these tools. We are not letting go of these tools now that we've got them. We're going to continue to use them. I sort of envision a hybrid when we come back. You know, we'll do some face-to-face. Certainly, we are able to continue these remote meetings. We found a lot of value in it.
This is Jeanette. And it's a question both for the youth program and for the the career centers. I hear the governor talk about businesses needing reopening plans. Have you started to look at what a reopening plan would look like, or some scenarios around that?
Yeah, so as an agency, we started a couple of weeks ago, kind of visioning and just having initial conversations. And I can talk about it some more, kind of generic operations. But yes, we've already kind of started planning on that ourselves, what it might look like. We've kind of just visioned up some stages. I've been part of the conversation with workforce board directors across the state. And it's going to be different across the state and even the various counties. But
My sense is there's a template. Is there a template that the governor is requiring, or?
Well, he for different counties and regions and stuff opening up, he's got the 7 different things and the measurements and all that fun stuff. And then there's some other parts in it as well. And so we're incorporating in all of that. But honestly, our bigger challenge is going to be when are we even allowed to do it, and then.
Well, I'm just listening to
like
him talking about Build Back Better, and part of that is, doing some scenario planning about. I'm assuming it includes how are you going to incorporate social distancing and and continue telework and.
Yeah. So I will tell you, if in terms of the planning that we have. We're looking at how do you maintain social distancing? How do you get the PPEs? Do you need to put the plexiglass things up like you kind of see, various cashier type of scenarios? We have no desire across the agency to abandon the e-signatures and the ability to virtual/remote interact with our customer base. If anything, we're looking to expand our capabilities on that kind of virtual basis, both in terms of the quantity of subjects and topics and things, but also in terms of even staff availability on a virtual basis. So we're planning on that very much so, and it includes all the fundamental stuff.
My question is more, I thought there might be a template out there. I don't know if Joanne, you or Judy have seen anything in terms of reopening templates that businesses are supposed to work on, or.
Yeah, so so Jeanette, there is a number of them out there that are not here necessarily locally, but I was able to get my hands on some from other parts of the state. And we are, in fact, here in Schuyler, we literally are putting together a template based on the industry. There's some question about does the plan have to be submitted to someone for approval or not? And we're getting some mixed messages on that. I'm getting that from my county administrator. But the right thing to do is to make sure every business has a plan. And so
Right.
we're putting that template together now. And so we'll do it for our industries here in Schuyler. And then we're going to make that available. Like we'll send that out to the IDAs when it's done. Once we know that it's met the local approvals here, we'll send that out.
Yeah, I would assume that affects all businesses, whether you're for profit, not for profit. I mean,
Yeah, well, it does. And it's interesting because they have different protocols, right? If you're a construction business, you have a different set of protocols, say, than you would if you're a restaurant. And so, in a restaurant scenario, the protocol might be that you have disposable menus instead of reusable menus. Or it might be that if you have reusable, they have to be wiped down between guests. And it could be that you use a QR code, period. You have it's a QR code that someone just takes their phone and snaps it, and no one's touching anything. It's all hands-free. So it's those kinds of nuances in each one that's a little different. But we are putting that together literally now.
Yeah, no, I think now's the time to do it, so it's good.
I don't know. Jamie's on the call. Jamie, I don't know if you've got any different information. I mean, the only thing that I have that, because I'm not getting mine, I'm getting mine through our county administrator, and he's on the know. I mean, he's on the ball, so I feel like he's got a good handle on it. But have you heard anything different about who does the plan go to, and is it approved? Have you,
well,
for the businesses?
And I've been talking with Jack Wheeler, and I know he's talking with Tim and everybody else, and there's been no clear guidance on whether or not these have to be approved. The way Jack in Steuben County would prefer to do it, because most of what I'm hearing from the county administrators and managers is they don't have the capacity or the staff to approve every plan, and they don't even want them. Jack doesn't even want them submitted. What he has said is that you should have it on file. You should use the guidance that the state is sending out. There's the 12-point plan, and then there was some additional guidance the state sent out yesterday that, our county health department has been willing to take a look at the plans in advance and make any recommendations. But the information that Jack is telling me is that, since the counties will likely be the enforcement agency, that you should basically have your plan on file internally, and then if there is a complaint, you should pull that out and say, here's my plan to reopen based on the state guidance. Now, as you know, Judy, that all is subject to change by the minute sometimes. So what we're doing in Steuben County is basically we're encouraging businesses to use the CDC guidelines, use any industry specific guidance that state associations or we may be able to dig up, and then look at the state guidelines that are being released and develop a reopening or social distancing plan that they can have on file at their business location, if and when the somebody complains and there is an enforcement issue that may need to occur.
Yeah, that's good. I think that we're in a little different position than some of our sister counties, because we just have so much of our economy is tied to visitors and people contact, right? I mean, it's a huge piece of our economy here, and so I think that we're probably erring on the side of being more cautious and making sure that the businesses are. And again, Tim will make this call, but my sense is I want to give the businesses as clear guidance as possible to protect our staffs that we have, and to protect our economy. If we open up and then something happens and we have to close, the rest of the region will be okay. It will. Schuyler will absolutely feel the damage. The data shows it. We will feel the damage far more than anybody else. So I think we have to be a little more conservative, but I don't know what that is. So
And I'll be honest with you, our county leadership is looking at tourism industry and, visitors and, those types of businesses that Skylar relies so heavily on. We've just, I don't want to say they punted, but that's like number 3 or 4 on the list of things that they're looking at right now. So,
right. It makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
And I guess my point is a lot of that guidance applies to social service agencies too, because it's a contact business.
Yeah. Keith, I have a question to get back to the youth report. So, one of the things we're hearing with schools being closed is that there is the likelihood that there are going to be a significant number of students who may fall through the crack because they haven't been able to get their grades up or they've missed certain, key benchmarks in being able to graduate. Has there been any consideration or thought given to reaching out to guidance counselors and school districts? And I know there's some limitations, with WIOA funding on being able to do that, but it may provide an opportunity to reach out to the various school districts and say, hey, we're here if you've got students that may need a little help or aren't going to make it or are falling through the cracks. We want to be able to provide a resource.
Absolutely. A community liaison, Laura West, up in Corning, has reached out to some contacts that she has to speak just super briefly about those restrictions that we have. We made beautiful progress on, and I thank Dan for this, on being able to reach out to schools within certain very tightly prescribed borders. But yeah, we've reached out to guidance counselors. In Corning and Elmira, we have plans this coming week to reach out to the guidance counselors down here in Bath and Hornell, and up in Montour Falls, Watkins Glen. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we've been discussing, and some of that outreach has already happened. I will say that schools are being incredibly lenient. When you talk about the students that are going to fall through the cracks, I don't want to be flippant or facetious, but they're basically saying if those kids are enrolled and they haven't done anything really terrible, they're pushing them towards graduation.
The only other thing I would say is I'm limited in what I can do programmatically, but I have reached out to the 3 county chief elected folks to see if there are opportunities as the county health departments are building out these contact tracers positions, if there's any need, because I could see that being a great work experience opportunity for our emerging workforce program, and we have ample funds right now, and it might be a way to kind of quickly ramp up with a little temporary army of people to do that. Steuben County has kind of gotten back to me, and they've said that they may be there may be some interest in some conversation around that. They were intrigued and or at least open to chatting some more. I did get some conversations, some email back and forth with Tim O'Hearn in Schuyler County. They think they have enough at the moment, but he was intrigued at the idea a little bit. Chemung County, I have heard nothing from, so I can't report on progress in Chemung County at the time. But that's another avenue that I know the counties are going to need it. And if we can bring resources to kind of help get that going and benefit the young people and benefit the counties and the health departments move through this, I've at least extended that branch.
Right. Good.
Wonderful.
All right. Okay. If there's no more questions, I believe we need a motion to accept the report.
AJ, so moved.
That was AJ. Thank you. Second?
This is Joanne. I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. So we have for the report summary for the youth program, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Keith. All right, our next item is the operator report, operations.
So we have a brand new person for some of you to me. Some of you met them briefly at the full board meeting. The workplace under their operator contract has filled their open vacancy. The person joining us today is David Preet. So I'll give the floor here to him in just a moment. He joined us. So that first Monday after the governor declared 100% there, and we sort of all panicked, was the very first day that Dave started in his new role. So he has learned a kind of literally in the fire. So that all being said, I think the transition's been pretty good so far. And Dave, I'll let you kind of present information and then talk about yourself. It's all yours.
Thanks, Dan. Well, first of all, I want to say it's nice to virtually meet everybody who I haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. Really looking forward to this role, and it has been sort of a strange onboarding or transition for me. I came from Care First, where I worked as business development coordinator for about a year, and this opportunity kind of fell in my lap. So I was really excited to come on board. And as I was leaving Care First is kind of when, at the same time when things were starting to close down a little bit, and it was, as Dan said, it was right around the time, the day I started is when all the businesses, the non-essential businesses kind of went into lockdown. So I've really been getting to know my staff virtually and all the committees and committee members and board members virtually. I can't wait to have the opportunity to actually go and see the centers physically, because I do know that it's there's going to be some changes and some challenges that we're going to face as we go forward, kind of post-COVID when we open back up, and trying to reconfigure how the centers are going to look during that time. So we definitely are going to need to not only determine what some of those social distancing policies are going to be, but we're going to need to enforce them as well. So the good news, even though the centers are physically closed, is that the career counselors right now are working remotely, taking calls to assist customers with job searches, placements, resume assistance, all the core services that we would normally offer when the centers are open physically. And they're also still taking training requests. I know that a couple requests have come in recently to the Elmira office or Elmira Center, I should say, for an interest in RN and an interest in medical billing and coding. So Carol, our counselor in Elmira, is looking into what programs may be available for that, for the individuals. I know we also have some ITAs that are in process that Phyllis will report on a little bit later. All of the counselors have been advised to direct callers, incoming callers, including those unemployment calls that come in, direct them to the Skill Up site. And the Skill Up is a site that actually is accessible on the CSS Workforce New York site, where the people can go and access free trainings. There's literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of them on there for people to access that can, help with their professional development and get them prepared for when the time comes to go back out into the working world, when hopefully soon the businesses open back up. The charts that I provided for you for this presentation just show the difference in the OSOS registrants between January 1st and March 20th, and then March 21st through, this was as of April 28th, so last week when I prepared the report. And of course, March 21st through the April 28th is that COVID period versus that pre-COVID period. There is a huge difference in the number of registrants. And then I think for obvious reasons, people just are not right now actively really searching for jobs. They're calling, they're registering for unemployment, and the job searches are on hold for the most part right now. So there has been a huge difference in the OSOS registrants, and those numbers are just for the workforce, the CSS workforce career counselors. That doesn't include the DOL registrations, or else those numbers would be a little bit higher. And we, like Keith's team, my team is also in the process of developing some virtual workshops and virtual training programs. We will continue to offer them once the centers open back up as well. We do see a lot of value in that, and we understand that there are some customers and who may prefer to communicate that way, using virtual services, which we are doing right now, via Teams, via Zoom, whatever platform they feel comfortable with. Our counselors are accommodating them, and they will do so with the trainings and the workshops that they're developing. We are collaborating with the emerging workforce team and other CSS workforce staff to develop some of these programs so that we can avoid duplication, and give the staff an opportunity to do some team building and work together and brainstorm and share ideas together. Some of the virtual training programs that are being developed include soft skills, self-branding, on-the-job services, targeting your resume, motivating your job search, interviewing and resume writing, and among some others. So we're excited about the opportunity to roll those out. A couple of them have been approved already for release, and a couple more are really close to being approved so that they can also be rolled out really soon and offered to our customers. And then we also have gotten approval, and thanks to Rayanne, to use the e-signatures, the electronic fillable forms for the ITA applications. The counselors will begin using these forms going forward as needed. And again, this is something that we will continue to use when needed or when necessary, even after the centers open back up. So, in a nutshell, and that's what I wanted to present today. And I also wanted to ask the question, since I am new to this position and still getting my feet wet and kind of learning the process for, some of the committees and some of the meetings, to see if there's particular information that you would like from me on a regular basis, because I'd be happy to provide whatever information would be useful for the committee members here on the O&O.
Well, David, this is Judy. I appreciate you asking that, and I would warmly invite you to ask that at each meeting, because I think this is I think the key for us now, especially what we're learning through this pandemic issue, is that it's flexibility. It's innovation and flexibility. So you never want a good catastrophic event to go to waste, right? So you want to use it to your advantage if you can. I do have a question for you, however. I have received some really positive responses from your Skills Up program. And so my question is, do you know how many, do you have a tally of how many folks are taking those classes at this point online?
Yeah, Dan, you read a report, and I believe it was in the 70s, correct? 73?
Yep. So we do get reports issued, and I think it was 78 people total unique have since we relaunched it. Some of our initial figures, because they tied to an old metrics program that we had, so my initial numbers were higher, but it was like stuff from like 2007. So just tracking since we reinitiated it, 78 folks. 35 completed. It was just off the top of my memory, so I'm not going to get too deep on the data, but we've had 35 course completions from those 78 people so far. They've logged, I'm not even going to say that number. They've logged a significant number of hours as well. So we're not unhappy with the uptake on it, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, I only because I know two professionals that saw it, went out and looked and took classes. So it's an interesting sort of audience. So thank you. Are there any anyone else on the committee have a question for for David? Okay. All right, then if nothing else, then why don't we go on to quality assurance and performance report, Dan?
Yep. So, well, real quick before I kind of hand it over to QA and Rayanne, I also want to just kind of share, operationally speaking, some additional items. So Dave mentioned that we're kind of cross-developing programming and content. So we've made a kind of a strategic decision locally that we're going to maximize the use of our staff ability to create localized content. Because it's more cost effective than trying to go out and buy other content, but also because it's local people's faces. So at some point when the centers are able to open up, and whatever that looks like, these are real people that they're going to bump into the center, and I think that's going to pay some dividends. We're cross-developing for all programs. So when we develop a course for, and when I say we, it's the Emerging Workforce Program, PTE in Chemung County, General Career Center operations, whatever. When we're creating content on the teams creating the workshops and stuff, we have representatives from all the programs. So yeah, it's a great team building exercise, but it also ensures that we make one workshop and it's useful across all of our spectrum of programming. So those are some things that we've done. And I will also tell you that we had a phone call yesterday with our friends in Tompkins County, our counterparts in Tompkins County, and Phyllis, Rayanne, Keith, and I were on with their one-stop folks. And I will tell you, Rayanne can certainly weigh in with her perspective on this as well, and Phyllis and Keith. But we're way out ahead operationally than most. Vast majority of any other career center systems out there in terms of our move to the e-signatures and the virtualization of some of our services and stuff. We are way ahead. And I guess I'll also just let Phyllis, Keith, Rayanne, I don't know how you felt when you came away from that conversation, but I think operationally our teams really deserve a pat on the back because they've done a good job. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
So that being said, I guess, Rayanne, the floor is yours unless someone else wants to chime in too.
Okay, so my 2 cents with the e-signatures is that, yep, the teams really deserve a shout out for that. But I also say that somebody was really smart to jump on it very quick and get our approvals initially, because I think one of the issues that Tompkins is having is they can get no response from their liaisons because their liaisons have been moved elsewhere. So the fact that we were so quick to jump on that and move it forward really paid off for us in the long run. So the first item on the agenda is the youth monitoring letter response. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so the last time I presented a monitoring letter, I had presented the initial one that I had sent. There was a request that I also include what the response is from the program. So basically what the programs are doing is using my letter template to just add the pieces for their response. So that's what I'm sharing you here. Youth was very interesting because typically I need to look at hard copy files, and it was in March when I was working on this, and I couldn't get to files, but there were some electronic documents that I could review. So I was able to review 2 youth enrollments. And out of those 2 youth enrollments, there was one issue in which the proper activities were not taken in OSOS. Therefore, OSOS didn't recognize them as eligible for youth services. The participant was eligible. And as you can see from actions taken right here, Keith and his team were able to go in there and fix that. So I found nothing that would be disallowed costs or anything of that nature. So this here's the letter and here's the response.
So what this does is it effectively completes the monitoring cycle locally, just so everyone kind of has, so Rayanne monitors locally. She gets the response, the reply, the fixes from, you know, the youth team or the adult DW team, as the case may be. And then we actually keep that on file so that when the state comes in and monitors us, they're going to be A, checking to make sure that we did monitoring. Then B, checking to make sure that we closed on the monitoring, and then they're going to go back through and choose a representative sample from the monitoring that we did to make sure that we didn't, you know, we're not falsifying some of the information in that. So this really at our end represents the cycle until such time as Tom Mormile from the state, our program person, comes in and does a double check to make sure that basically his job is now going to be to monitor our monitoring. Which is really the optimal scenario of how we want it to work. So we're at a very good place from a procedure, policy, and process perspective. We're in a very, very good place, and we're functioning the way we should be functioning.
There's an asterisk for board action.
Yep. So I'll take a motion to accept the youth monitoring review. And I'm assuming this is the, that we are accepting your report and the findings and your response.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yeah, this is Jeanette. I make a motion to accept the report.
Thank you, Jeanette. Is there a second?
AJ second.
Thank you, AJ. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. So that's the piece. All right. Next.
Okay, so for the youth program or for the adult program update, I actually do have a response to share. So I will share my screen. So here is the response from Mr. Preet. So here's kind of a general scenario with the adults. So the adults letter was issued at the end of March. The files are not accessible to any staff. So there were some areas that they couldn't, so when I issue a letter, the expectation is that these are resolved within 30 days. If not, then they are to request an extension. So a lot of these findings are not resolved because of they can't get to the files, or the OSIS help desk isn't really available. So an extension was requested for an additional 30 days after the staff are allowed back in the centers. So I did loop back to them and approved the 30 days. So there were, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you can see the color codes. So the green means they've reached out to the help desk for assistance. The purple means they need the hard copy files. And these here are indicated as completed. And then later there's some yellow in here that indicate completed. So the two, there's a lot of, data entry issues that continue to creep up. I will say I didn't see as many of those as I've seen in the past. I think that the two issues that continue to be things that need improvement are provision of follow-up activities and also correctly reporting performance indicators in OSOS. So I did provide a training to the workplace staff last week, and they developed a plan to kind of get everybody caught up with follow-up training, and they'll get back with me by the end of this week. And then once people have access to the files, we'll dig in further with regards to the performance outcome reporting.
So Rayanne, are there any findings here that are reoccurring findings?
Okay, the measurable skills, the performance outcomes are recurrent, but again, that's a new, everybody's learning that one. So kind of, I'm expecting those to be recurrent. I would hope that after this run through, I think people ought to be pretty good at it the next time I pull files. The follow-up is recurrent. And that is something that like I said, I provided the training this week. I worked with a team to refine and improve their own system to providing this. And I then scheduled a second follow-up this week to see how they were doing with that.
And the items that are, I think I'm focusing on sort of the hard copy sort of issue. What's the long-term strategy for that? Because we really should be moving towards an electronic. So why the hard copy, and what's the plan forward?
Okay, so actually that should resolve itself because we are shifting all of our forms into a fillable PDF version that can be it can be processed electronically. It can be stored electronically. So I think our e-signature work should resolve that.
But it is going to take some time to work through. So the snapshot of the period that we're looking at files is way before we did any e-signature stuff. So the files from this time period are just there's the old wet signature. They're sitting presumably sitting in a file, locked in a cabinet in, Elmira, Hornell, Montour, wherever. We just physically can't get there to get to the files and actually look at those hard copies. But Rayanne is spot on. Moving forward, once we have the electronic signature capability, those documents will be stored virtually, and the paper files will go away, by and large.
Other comments, suggestions?
The other thing I would say is on the outcome measures issue, there was two recurrent. There's outcome measures and follow-up. Follow-up is something that I will tell you, at least across New York State, it's been very challenging for areas to do effectively just because of the volume of the work. That being said, it's still a requirement under the federal rules, so we have to do it. We've got to figure that out. And I think Dave, it's one of those things that he's prioritizing in his task of things. So I'm comfortable we're going to move closer to that. The other one is the outcome reporting. That's really brand new for the system as a whole. And so it's not our team that's necessarily behind on that. The entire, all of New York State was behind that. And so we're catching up with that with the rest of the state. So they both are recurrent, and we're aware of that. They both need to be fixed because they're requirements. We're aware of that and we're moving forward. One is a brand new, requirement, and so that's kind of understood. But the follow-up is something that is going to have a systemic challenge because of volume-related stuff. But we'll figure out our best way to tackle that.
Anybody else from the committee have any concerns, questions regarding this report?
This is Jeanette. Is the year, are you auditing back 1 year or back to program year, or what's your period?
Okay, so the period of, I monitor everything. I will tell you this time frame, this time frame probably reached I think it completed PY 18, and I think that it got a nice chunk of PY 19.
The reason that feels so squishy and we don't have enough from this date to that date is that because of the requirements of a monitoring process that the New York State Department of Labor has outlined, when we pull a file now, we actually may be checking things that happened a year and a half ago in terms of eligibility, or they may not have started now, or they may have started here, but there's overlap. It gets really, really, even, I mean, I've got, well, at least a decade of this stuff going on, and I still struggle mentally sometimes with the time frames, and they are truly squishy in that. So please, I was gonna kind of chuckle a little bit, Jeanette, when you asked that, because I knew the answer was going to be uncomfortably vague, perhaps. but yeah, it's roughly, it probably closes out most of the active 18 files, gets us a goodly chunk of the way through the 19 files, but it isn't absolutely current and all inclusive, and we won't be closing out even the 19 files until perhaps 20 or 21. So yeah, sorry, I can't give you a better answer than that, unless Rayanne, you've got a tighter answer.
Well, my goal is to monitor it close in real time, and I've made some headway, although the current environment's going to slow that down. But yeah.
Okay,
So,
thank
okay.
I will also just kind of share with you as the operations and oversight, and you guys look at this performance stuff. So CSS area, we are really a superstar. And when I say we, I'm really probably talking Rayanne. We're a superstar on these performance monitoring programs. The state requirement is something like 10% of the pool. We have been implementing and running with 100% monitoring of our files, because we had, well, almost 4 years ago when I sort of kind of came back, we had such a mess on our hands that we instituted 100% until we were comfortable that we weren't going to have any more disallowed costs, and the staff were trained it up to speed. So the state actually sort of chuckles a little bit when they look at the volume of what we're recording. But from a board perspective, you really should be pretty comfortable with the results, because we are literally doing 100%. So if there are problems in here, we are finding them. It's not one of those things where we'd get surprised down the road because it wasn't part of our 10% sample or something. So that's what I would say.
Okay. All right. Next is the OSOS registration.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I've reported on this, last month and perhaps even earlier. So this is not new information. So the week ending 3/29 was a peak. I will tell you, so these are registrations into OSOS. They could be from a face-to-face interaction in a career center, or they could be a person logging into Job Zone, and probably they're logging into Job Zone as a way to apply for their UI. So when they apply for UI, their systems connect. So this is this could potentially be a visual for UI in our WIP. So the peak week was ending 3/29, and it's trending down each week. But and these numbers themselves grow because there is a lag. Because what we do know is that some people being able to apply for UI today, really, they've been trying for a month. So that 2,000 figure for the week ending 3/29, the last I looked, it's probably about 2,400. And then all of the other bars will go up too as I pull the data. But even with this number, the week ending 4/26, there were still 500 new enrollments, which is, I personally think that that's still a large number, given that we're this far in. I just think that that's something that we should keep in the back of our minds. But really, this is just a presentation to show you the data that we're able to pull. This is not news to anybody. Are there any questions?
The one piece of data that we're gonna, and most of the folks that are on this call have probably seen this, because I do try and send it out periodically. If it's your first time seeing it, it graphically does very much show you what really the push is, and if this is just our area, you can imagine across the state how rapidly this problem hit. And then once you see that in a graph, multiply it times the size of New York State, then you begin understanding why the New York State Department of Labor on the UI front has struggled. The magnitude of this increase and the suddenness of the increase was just beyond what I think most people could even imagine as a worst case scenario. What data set is not in there yet, and Rayanne and I are still struggling to come up with some sort of a number, is how many are active? How many actual job seekers do we have out there? You would think it would be real easy for us to just kind of plug it in, but right before the COVID, a couple of weeks, maybe a month before the COVID crisis hit, the management report functionality of our database system was taken down by the state for repairs, and then everybody was reassigned other things, and so we don't have access to the management reports like we used to. So we're kind of flying a little bit blind, and Rayanne and I have been kind of creating snippets, kind of workarounds, if you will, stand-in proxy numbers, however you want to look at it, to kind of give you all a feel for what the system is looking at. The next piece that she and I are still negotiating on is how many job seekers are out there, because that chart you saw was just the new enrollees in those respective weeks. It's not the cumulative total of those. I'm not going to throw out numbers out there at this point, other than to tell you that my instincts were that we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000. The best data set that Rayanne showed me yesterday was significantly higher than that 10,000 number in my mind. So we need to look at that some more. And then if you also look at the official unemployment numbers that the New York State Department of Labor releases, and you look at our area, it shows that we've only got, for the month of April, we only had like 400 more unemployed people, which is mind-bogglingly inaccurate. I don't know where those numbers are coming from. I have no idea. So we're trying to make sense of that and trying to get to the bottom of it, but we're kind of struggling with getting and compiling data because this management report structure is down, and the state is so singularly focused on UI that we can't get progress on it. But I'm getting close enough to where I want to throw out some initial numbers, and then just with lots of caveats as to what it is. But I think that the number will startle you all when you see it. Whatever it is, even plus or minus 2,000 or 3,000, you're going to be startled. It's that type of big number. For those of you that were around in the Great Recession, the numbers that we're seeing here they're dwarfing the Great Recession numbers, and that's crazy. I will tell you that for the workforce boards across the state, everybody is in panic mode at the workforce board level. How are we going to serve all these people when and if the career centers are able to open? I will tell you that the New York State Department of Labor, at least publicly on these calls, they won't even talk about reopening the center. They're not they're not sharing any plans. They're not engaging in conversations around it. They are so focused on just pushing current UI that they're not even thinking about it. So the WIB directors across the state did present a plan and some suggestions and some guidance templates to the Department of Labor. Sadly, I'm missing that call with the Department of Labor right now. That's going on live on another Zoom channel. But maybe we can finally get the Department of Labor to engage. And I'm not throwing stones at the Department of Labor for not engaging, because the magnitude of UI claims is mind-boggling. So I'm not throwing stones. I don't want anyone to interpret it that way. But they've not been able to. They've been so focused on the absolute moment and cleaning up this mess that they've not put any real thought into reopening and what does that look like. And good Lord, if we truly have this many unemployed people, are we going to ask them all to come into the career centers for the meet with the UI LSR? Holy mackerel, Andy, we don't have enough LSRs. It's just crazy numbers. So there are those conversations going on there. I think our work for creating some scalable digital types of services, I think is working to our favor, or will work because we can scale. You know, when we're working with cohorts of people in a digital world, in a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, you can hit a lot of people very quickly. And so I think our work there is going to become increasingly important. But I think the fact that we're out in front of other areas on this is going to help us in terms of delivering services to the residents of our 3 counties. Yeah,
And
so that's.
Do you have any? Are you getting any insight or thoughts into reopening and ramping back up? Because, and I'm just, the reason I'm asking is because, you know, I've gotten the sense that, you know, everybody is thinking that a ramp up or reemployment is going to be slow and rocky. But there was a Chmura webinar earlier this week, and Judy, I don't know if you were on it or not, but I'm looking at the slide deck today, and, you know, Chmura, who is a very well-respected, you know, data source, and their economists, you know, are really looking at worst-case scenario being a 6-month decline and then a very quick ramp up afterwards. And, you know, that doesn't paint as bad of a picture as what some others have. And I was just curious if you had any sense or were hearing anything through your channels of what you know, how long this is going to last and what the impacts are going to be. So
I will say that our business information team has been very diligent, and I've been started wading through some of those. Our BIN team operationally has contacted and had conversations with over 700 businesses across the 3 county area since the beginning of April. And I'm kind of wading through comments and trying to analyze kind of what's going on out there. So I'm not really prepared to kind of issue a well thought out thought, because I'm still kind of processing and reading comments and information. But I will tell you that my feeling is still kind of what I've shared in others. I think in the numbers and kind of the scenario I've used is if businesses had 20 employees on the day they, you know, shifted their operations, I don't see them on the day they're allowed to open hiring and bringing back all 20. I think from a cash flow, just being able to manage that kind of payroll, I just don't see them having those kind of dollars at their hands to do it, and the sales of whatever their industry, their sales to kind of justify. Manufacturing, it could be an exception there. I don't even know about that. So I would say that from what I can gather, they are going to come back. I got to be honest, in reading some of these latest comments, businesses are being tremendously creative out of this. They are, you know, saying they're, you know, running 70-80% of their staff right now, whether they're all at 40 hours a week. I don't have that level of breakdown. But they're running they've kind of figured out how to do the carry out, walk-in, plexiglass walls. Businesses are being tremendously creative on that front. Now, will that, you know, allow them to stay in existence? And those type of things I don't know yet. But I still hold to some of my earlier statements that I don't think if businesses had 20 employees, I don't see them getting to 20, maybe for an extended period of time until they've grown their business. I really don't see that happening, whether they go to 14 or 18 and whether it takes 3 months or 6 months. I don't have that kind of insight right now.
Well, and that's the sense, I agree with your take on that, and that's the sense I've got. I was just really surprised to see some of this Chmura data come out where it paints a much more optimistic picture on employment and economic growth than what I think we're going to see.
You know, I got to be honest, the amount of money and I'm just going to zoom out macroeconomics from the sheer volume of cash being pumped out there, and the extra $600 a week, like it or not, the extended UI benefits, the PPP, the EIDLs, the cornucopia of different things that are pumping money out there. If I were an economist and I were rolling things up big picture and including all these big, humongous dollar numbers in there, you know, maybe I would be leaning closer to where Chamura is. I don't have the access to that data, so I don't know. But there is huge volume of dollars out there.
Well, I tell you what's interesting, and again, looking at the Chamura data, and Jamie, I think I sent this to you. They did a vulnerability index by county for the whole country, and they based it on the sectors, right? They based it on those sectors that would have the greatest impact from COVID. And what's interesting is that the majority of our counties in the southern tier are actually better than the average county in the United States in terms of its vulnerability, meaning that the jobs are not as impacted. It's Schuyler.
Yeah.
Schuyler is significantly over, so we are much more vulnerable. And interestingly enough, you know, Shenango was really low. I mean, they shouldn't really have any sort of impact at all. It's really interesting in terms of jobs. They should, and so it comes down to what the mix is of your economy, and those that have, you know, lower wage, service, those kinds of jobs are the ones that are most vulnerable.
Yeah, I concur, Judy, and I hope you're not offended. I know I've said this to you privately. You know, I have been since the beginning of this, and I've told my staff that we need to pay particular attention to. I'm scared for Schuyler County's economy, just because of that.
Be in my shoes.
Yeah, I don't want to be in your shoes, Judy. I won't even pretend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, are we any other questions for Dan or Rayanne? Okay. Well, hearing none, I'll just mention that our next meeting is June the 3rd at 2:30. Hopefully by that point we can meet again in person, if everything goes right. And I'll accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Jamie, so moved.
Thank you, Jamie. A second?
Jeanette, second.
Jeanette, thank you very much. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So our meeting is adjourned, so you can turn off the recording now, Dan. Thank you very much.
Mel, you are on.